Welcome to Jennifer with Coffee, a mindset podcast for people who are looking for real change. I'm Jennifer Lauer, writer, yogi, and fitness fanatic. Lately, I've been having lots of coffee meetups, long, honest conversations that delve into mindset, identity, choices, and habits that shape our lives. I kept thinking how I wanted to share these conversations, so here we are. Each episode moves in 3 beats: an inspirational story, an interview with thinkers, builders, athletes, and artists, people who want to share their own transformations. And we'll end with a brief meditation to practice calming the nervous system. Before we get to today's interview, I want to start with a quick story. Okay, so if we're friends, I've probably told you my Mookie Betts story. I pretty much tell it to everyone I meet because it inspired me so much. So to set the scene, it's the celebration after the World Series. The Dodgers beat the Blue Jays with a game-winning double play. Mookie Betts, former Red Sox player, just a little note for my hometown people, was interviewed right after the game, and what he said truly changed the way I think about being nervous. And I hope it will for you too. So after the game, they were interviewing him, and he is playing shortstop. He's a 4-time world champion player, and they ask him, how did you feel in that big moment as the pitcher winds up and there are runners on base? So a hit would be a win for the Blue Jays, a double play is a win for the Dodgers. Spoiler alert, the Dodgers won. He said he got nervous, and he never gets nervous. So he told himself in that moment, be nasty. You just got to be nasty. You got to be nasty. And that's the moment he took his nerves and in a split second turned them into a positive mantra, be nasty. Okay, so I heard that and I was like, this is the wisest thing I've heard in a while. Cut to, I'm telling everyone I know. Now, me telling inspo stories is not new. Usually I get eye rolls from my kids, but still I go on telling everyone what a sage Mookie Betts is. Anyway, I'm on the phone with a friend and I'm telling the story for the zillionth time. And my youngest overhears me and he says, hey mom, I did that. And I'm like, please hold, you did what? And he said at swim class, he was doing his timed freestyle and he was nervous. So he kept saying to himself, be nasty, be nasty. And that right there shook me because number one, my kid actually listened to me. And number 2, he used it to help himself get through a hard thing. So please feel free to share the Mookie Betts story. And the next time you get nervous doing a difficult thing, remember to be nasty. And now for our interview. Lorna Osunsanmi is a television writer, producer, and author. Lorna's successful career in television spans work on Netflix, Hulu, CW, and Showtime, best known for shows like All American, Daybreak, Hemlock Grove, and Shaka, King of the Zulus. She also wrote the Princess Diaries spinoff for Disney and the indie film Money Moves. She developed a series for Tyler Perry Productions and is currently in development with Picture Start. Lorna is also the author of the inspirational book Becoming Bold, where she discusses balancing work, life, and love. As if all of this wasn't impressive enough, Lorna is currently finishing up her master's in creative writing and literature at Harvard. Let's have coffee with Lorna Osunsanmi.
Lorna, I'm so glad to have you here. Could you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, how you became a TV writer and showrunner?
Thank you so much for having me, Jennifer. I really appreciate it. I'm so excited to be speaking to your audience and to your listeners. It's an odyssey, as you know, this business, but I always wanted to be a writer since I was 9. And when I was in college, I was an English major and a pre-law minor, and my mom said writing was a hobby when I was younger. So I believed her. And then like I said, going back a little bit, I was a junior in college. When I was a junior in college, I made the decision to not listen And I pivoted and I decided to look into writing again and not be a lawyer and not go to law school. And I looked at all the forms of writing and what was the most intriguing, the most exciting, the most fascinating. And I was like, oh, TV and film, my work can live outside the bounds of the page. And that was really exciting to me. I didn't think about it being difficult. I didn't think about any of it. I was just thinking about, oh, I would really love to do that. And I just set out to strategizing where I needed to go, what I needed to do, how can I make that happen? And I decided I was going to buy a bunch of books and read and check out books and join different screenwriting organizations while I still lived in Texas, by the way. I decided the best education would be real time. I found independent productions in Texas and Dallas, and I worked on them. Then I was accepted into a TV and film writing program called Act One Writing for Hollywood, and it is still in existence today. At the time, showing my age, you had to fly to California and stay there for a summer. And the program itself found homes for the students to live. There was only 30 of us. And entertainment professionals like working showrunners, working screenwriters, just working TV writers came and lectured and mentored and gave us writing tools. It was all writers. And I was like, oh, I can do this. And I became a teacher after that. I taught for 2 years. I taught English for 2 years because I returned to Texas. I did not stay after this program.
Huh.
And then afterward, I moved. I moved to LA, and I decided that I would just start from the bottom, like as a PA. And that's what happened. In my head, I had my own plan. I know people have their own ideas of how they want to break into the business. My plan and my idea was just to start as an assistant because I didn't know anybody. And I just knew I was going to have to work my way up and network and push and hustle. And that's what happened. And I became an assistant, and my showrunner helped me out, gave me an episode. And then my husband's former manager connected me to a showrunner who hired me. And that's how it all began.
Can I ask, did you utilize any of the connections from that program that you did when you finally did move to LA?
No, all of those individuals were really high end. Like, it was the showrunner of that 70s show that was really big. It was screenwriters who had movies in the theaters. Scott Derrickson, he was like what is it? The Possession of Emily Rose, I think, was just out. But it's I don't know. When I moved, I didn't feel like I could call them and be like, "Hey, can you get me work?" Like
Right.
It's so bizarre. It's funny. No one has ever asked me that. Number one, and number two, that never occurred to me to do because of being in the program for that time, for the month and for the summer months that I did. It's like 2.5 months. It was just a sense of they had their people. Like there was a sense of they had their people that they were going to promote and move up, and that wasn't going to be me. And now I know better. Now I ask people all the time.
Would you say that time then just served as more of an impetus to get you to LA? It like inspired you more than it was a connection networking experience?
I think that psychologically, how I think about things is everything. People come into your life not necessarily to give you something, it's to tell you something. So I'm always ready to receive what people have to say. And I did learn about the business. I learned politics. I learned what not to say and what to say. I learned about writing, the craft of writing. Obviously, in a summer program, they can't teach you how to write, but I learned a variety of tools from working professionals, which was quite useful to me because my TV writing is all 100% self-taught. Now, at the time it was all self-taught. Now I've taken a variety of classes. I've been in writers' rooms, so now I can't, claim that anymore. But in the beginning, it was 100% self-taught. So it was an aggressive teaching program. I did learn quite a bit. And maybe that's why I felt like I didn't need to take anything else. Like they had given me so much. They'd given me so many tools to work with that by the time I finished the program, I just knew it wasn't time, it wasn't time for me to move to Los Angeles, but I felt like I knew a lot. I felt like,
Okay.
okay, I could navigate this city because I'd met people at the time who had returned. They went to LA, they had their dreams, and they came back, and I was not interested in being that person. So I wanted to make sure I landed on firm ground. And so I wanted to make necessary preparations. But there's something about preparing for the political landscape of what you are going to be stepping into that I think had a lot of those people understood the nature of the beast, they probably would have been more prepared, and they probably wouldn't have come back.
Clearly it worked, right? I'm really interested in the before and after of how people create
Love
their
that.
lives. I find that time in between, that
Mm,
becoming period, so intriguing. So let's jump right into that. And can
yeah.
you tell me about a time in your life? I mean, this one was that, actually, that transformation, but that you manifested a transformation that was really clear to you, the before moment and the after moment.
Wow. I would say, I mean, I have two, relationally and professionally.
Okay.
Relationally, I'll start with that because, we
Yeah.
downplay our relationships in this town. It's all about the work. But I feel like they should run in tandem and parallel to each other because they both have such beautiful impacts on the health and well-being of our entire life. But before, when I lived in Texas and before my life, I never thought I would be married. I didn't think I would have children. I feel like I've told you this before.
That's okay. You haven't told the listeners.
I did not think that was going to be my story. I just thought I would be this single lady, fulfilled. I felt fulfilled even then when I was single. I thought I would be this single lady and just work, and that would be it, and I wouldn't have children. And at some point, and I operated my life in that way. When you have a certain narrative about your life, you sort of operate in the space of that
Yeah,
story you've told yourself. So I
sure.
didn't really try to make have meaningful, lasting partnerships. I just sort of dated casually, and that was it. And not even a lot of dating, just mostly work. But I felt very satisfied. But when I moved to Los Angeles, I thought about it, and you flash forward. I'm of the mind where you sort of reverse engineer your life and think about what the end is going to look like. And then you
Hmm.
think about what the steps you have to take to get there. So in the end, I did not conceive of myself being alone. I didn't conceive of myself being alone, and I didn't want to be by myself. And I could see myself at the end. I saw the kids, not visually, but I was like, oh, I will have children. And so I was like, okay, well, if that's the end, you have to get started right now. Right after I moved, it was like, I moved in February. I was like, okay, God, I think I really want this. I do want to be in a relationship. I want to be married, and I want to have children. And, you write the whole long list. And I'd done that years ago, and I don't even
Hmm.
know where the list was at this point. But I was like, I think I've been lying for a long time when I wrote the list even. It's like, but I think I'm really ready, and I need this person to be comfortable with waiting for me, because just because you meet somebody and you say you're ready doesn't mean you're ready. And I knew that I would not be ready. And maybe 2 weeks later, it was probably about a month and a half, 2 months into living in Los Angeles, that I met a lovely gentleman who became my husband.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Back up. You decided that in the end you wanted to have this family that you hadn't considered before.
Yes.
And then you made a list and you thought about, I want this to happen. I want a husband, not just to be the single artist
Yes.
experience, which
Yes.
I completely relate to, by the way. So when and how did you meet your husband?
That's so funny. I wrote the list almost 4 or 5 years
Whoa.
before I even conceived this new thing. And
Okay.
I wrote it while I was in Texas. And it
Okay.
was long. It was like a legal pad, and I put it in some box. And of course, when I moved to LA, I don't know where the thing is. I probably threw it away. But I was like, it's not for me. It's for you, God. It's your list, God. You need to make sure all those things are marked off. I can't do that. And so I didn't feel the urge to try to find it. But I met my husband while I was working as a PA, a post PA on the Bernie Mac show, which post I was an editorial PA, not in production. So that means whatever the editors needed. So I would go grab lunch for a couple editors. I would go do runs for film and footage and for stock and all of that. And so that was part of my workflow every day, was to start at this post house called Technicolor Complete Post. And that building is no longer, the building is there, but they have a new fancier building on Sunset, which is really funny. But I went to the more
Original.
sketchy, I went to the original sketchy one directly across the street from the brand new one, which is really hilarious. And I go down to the vault and I picked up, I'm really showing my age. So they digitized the 35 millimeter cans and put it on VHS tapes. So I picked up 2 VHS tapes to bring them back to the office and dub like multiple copies and walk them around in boxes to all the executives. So that was my sort of life. I started and stopped at Technicolor. So I walk in, regular day, and there he is. There he is. He's standing at the counter, and I was like giddy in my boots. I was so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, it's my lucky day. Who is this beautiful man? I was just over the stinking moon. I walked up to him and there was such a huge grin on my face. I was like, oh, and I'm having a whole conversation in my head, by the way. The conversation when I saw him was like, oh my gosh, when I get to him, I'm going to talk to him and I'm going to get his number and it's going to be on. And then I could, because that was the conversation in my head, by the time I got to him, I was smiling so hard. And then I was like, oh my God, Lorna, calm down. You've lost all your cool points. All your cards are on the table. There's no mystery. You've got nothing. You've got nothing. And I was like, oh, well, I've got nothing. So I'm just like standing so close to him. And I'm like, hi, my name is Lorna. I just moved from Texas. And I don't even know what I'm saying. I'm just chattering. And I'm like, I've completely fallen apart, by the way. And I've just given up. And he's just staring at me. He has not said a word this whole time. He's just staring at me and he's smiling. So I was like, okay, well, it's not going so bad. He's not looking at me like a psycho, even though I feel crazy. And then I was like, oh, I don't know if this is going well. And then he asked me for my number. He asked me for my number. And we exchanged numbers and he called me. We were true to the prayer. We were friends for a whole year. And because I was so afraid, we were friends for a year. And then after the year, it was like, either you're going to stop being, you're going to be fearless and you're going to move forward. And so I called him like almost a year to date. And he was like, it was so funny because it was like, we didn't have, and by the way, going backward just to here, we did chat and communicate during that year. And we hung out a little bit during that year. So it wasn't like no communicado. We were chatting, but it was all very friendly like. And then finally, toward the end of the year, I was like, okay, this is it. I'm going to do it. So I called him. I was like, hey. And I don't know. All I did was say, hey. And he knew what that meant. He knew.
What?
And we started dating after that. It was weird intuition. When I said, it was just the weirdest hey. It was like, I just was like, so hey. And it was just like, and then we just it was just such an instant, like subliminal, subconscious, intuitive shift where it was like, oh yeah, at some point we're going to get married.
Oh my God.
It was wrapped up in that. The energy of that one call, in that one hey, it was all wrapped into like its own little cosmos. And it was like, oh yeah, and no matter how long we date, it's going to end the same way. We're going to be married.
Oh, I love that it was love at first sight and then deep love at first hey.
Yeah, I know. It really was hilarious. And I was like, oh, that's all it took. It was really funny. It was really funny and very
Oh.
endearing and all the things. But that, I think that was like the biggest thing, like personally, to happen. And then professionally, it was like my second show as a writer. I wasn't sure what show to go on, and I had other opportunities. I was like, I need to be on the show that is going to teach me the nuts and bolts of TV writing in sort of like a bare bones way.
Okay.
And I'm not interested in being on a show that isn't like that, because TV writing is complicated. You have a lot of storylines. You have to know how to weave it. I wasn't formally trained, so I was like, I need to be in a room where they're not training me. I don't need that kind of hand holding, but how they break it down is in such a way that I can learn. And wouldn't you know, I ended up on All American. Greg Berlanti was in the room for 2 seasons. He is a genius. He is a master writer, TV writer. He is a savant. And he was in there for 2 whole seasons, 2 years, breaking down what the arcs and how a TV show is put together and brought and pulled apart and put back together, and how it should be pitched, how you need to think about it, how you need to think through acts 1, 2, 3, 4, and depending on how many acts a network has. And it was incredible. So I feel like those 2 moments were the biggest, I think, biggest transformational.
For the second one, for the career one, you just thought, oh, I really need to be on a show that's going to teach me the structure of TV writing? Or did you write it down? Was it a goal? Because that's, I mean, magical that you got school from this brilliant writer. How do you think that manifested? Did you just have that intention? What was the in between?
Yeah, I am always a thinker of what do I want and what do I need. I'm
Mm,
constantly like, what do I want? What do I need?
hmm
Can they align? The and I'm always very, very conscious, like God is like, on a spiritual
hmm
sense, I always feel the question and the urge come into my spirit of, what do you want? What
hmm
is it that you want? And the hope is that the want and the need can align. That's always the hope. But at some point, you just have to be able to really, and it takes me a long time sometimes to think about it. But I feel like this was more accidental, where it was like,
Okay.
what do you want? And I was like, oh, well, yeah, I want to be on a show, but I need to know how to write if I'm going to keep working.
Yeah.
If I'm going to keep working, I need to be highly successful at this craft. And either I'm going to go back to school, which online classes started to become a thing. So I was like, okay, well, I can always keep working and just take classes on the side. But that's confidence, right? You just have to
Yeah.
get, at some point you have to get confident about your work. I had already successfully written 3 pilots, and they'd gotten me really great feedback. So at some point, I know a part of the journey and transformation is just needing confidence in my work.
Mm,
So I know that's a big part of the story for me. But in the space of understanding exactly where my writing, was and where I wanted it to be, I was like, okay, I need to be in a setting like that. And I had been a long time assistant before I had gotten my first writing job. Long time assistant. I'd been in countless rooms as an assistant to showrunners, and and a lot of them are brilliant, genius writers. Emmy winning, award winning writers, wrote novels and books. These showrunners that I've worked for, but I never heard them break down or disseminate how they do what they do.
mm,
Very few of them can actually tell you whether they don't want to share it, because they feel like their knowledge is proprietary, or they don't know how because it's so intuitive. It's so intuitive and so internal, which writing generally is,
hmm
that who can articulate exactly how they come up with their secret sauce. And so it was either one or the other. And I was like, I don't know if this is this. To a certain degree, when I am articulating and saying what I want and what I need, I don't even factor in that it may not exist. I literally, it is irrelevant to me. I don't need to do research. I'm not going to. I just assume that it does. And yeah, I just put that in my head. Like you said, set an intention, set a prayer. And I don't think I wrote it down. And generally, I'm pretty big on writing things down, but I think I just really held it in my heart. Like, this is definitely what I want. I want this. I want this. And I just kept repeating, like, I really want to be in a. And it wasn't that. And I didn't think about it in terms that it didn't exist.
I love that. I think that might be the trick of the speed in which you received it is you knew this thing that I want and need. I wouldn't want or need this if it didn't exist.
Yeah, and I don't even know if I was that clear as what you're saying. I don't even know. I literally didn't make it a point of interest. It
Sure.
was like, of course it does.
Yeah.
I tell you what, I think on an intuitive and a subconscious level, because you're asking the question, now I'm able to articulate it. I think it was the fact if I can ask for it, it has to exist.
Mm.
So there should be no qualms about, oh, does it exist? No, if you're thinking it and you're conceiving it, it exists. Even Act One, now that I think about it, going back, Act One, writing for Hollywood, that was also a prayer because I was like, you know what? I need to be in a writing program that's really short, that's over the summer, that I can learn, from people. At every single thing that I like talked out loud in my head and was the prayer. I go online. It was right before I went online. And then I go online and then I find it. Act One, writing for Hollywood.
Wow.
And it was so idyllic. And they only accept 30 people. And they at the time, they were getting thousands of applicants. And so I felt very fortunate and grateful and all the things that I was one of the 30 who got in to work with such extraordinary, talented writers and directors, writer-directors. But yeah, you're right. I would say whatever it is that you need, that's what the request is. It's not,
Yeah.
oh, I hope it exists. You don't put any caveats on it. You don't, it's like you go into the store and every single thing is there and it's all free. When you walk into a store and single thing is in there, you just go in and you just pick stuff up. You're not thinking about anything.
Right.
That's the rules of the universe as well.
Yeah. I think that there's a great amount of faith
Yeah.
that you wouldn't have the thought, you wouldn't have the feeling if it wasn't. That is the divine part of it all.
Ooh, yeah,
is,
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you wouldn't have that urge or the curiosity
Yeah.
if there wasn't something there for you. When it comes to dreams and desires and goals, I think we can sometimes intellectualize ourselves out of going for something, or you mentioned research your way out of something. You said these are some of the things I like, and then that thing came to you rather than trying to force feed the universe what you want and try to elbow your way through. It's actually a little more nuanced where if you trust that thing that you want, desire, need, feel drawn to is out there, that's all you really need. It's like the faith that will come to you.
You're right. It absolutely is. You're so right. Well said. Because I really do stand in my humanness. Like if we have to give the caveat because I am a person of faith, but even as a person who believes in Buddha or believes in whatever you believe in, if you have any kind of sense of divinity and that there's something greater out there, then you have to stand in your humanness that you are not in control of this big orb. You're not in control of the universe. You're not in control of anything. You're not God. You didn't make anything. You didn't do anything. So I stand in my humanness when I make my request because I was like, I feel like I can't do that. Like, I don't know a human being who has created dirt. I know scientists are aggressively trying to find the concoction to create dirt. I don't know anybody who's made a test tube tree. Like, we have not conceived these things. We research them and we look at them and we examine them, but there is the mysteries of the universe. So I sit in my humanness to those and bow in those, awe-inspiring things and say, if I can't do that, I'm not going to try to do these other things. Why do I need to? I don't have to. That is not my, I'm like, God, that's not my fight.
Right.
That's not my fight.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that there is a natural human connection we're supposed to have with human beings. I think we're supposed to allow people to help us. I think it's humbling to allow people into our lives, to sow into us. But I think at some point we have to just stand back and, to your point, trust and just believe.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting time to look at the opposite of that. So you've had this ease of transformation these moments that you've brought up. Has there ever been like an obstacle where you look back at it and you're like, oh, that kept me back longer than it should have? Or is there a time when that transformation wasn't so easily received?
Yeah, I think it was the transition from going from assistant to like my very first job, that had to do with me not being as confident in my work to put it out there even more than I had been. To your, earlier, it's like you have to tell people, you have to talk to people, you have to ask people. It's a part of, I don't know, there's something connective about asking people for help, and we're supposed to do that. There's something, sometimes people don't want to ask for help, and I just think it's really important to be able to ask for help, because that is my struggle. My struggle is asking for help. At some point, you have to ask people for help, and they actually expect it. That was the learning curve. I needed to learn that people expect you to ask them for help, and I wasn't doing that. It's funny. I did intuitively learn that, or I knew that, and I started to ask people more. But I ran into a friend who I worked for as an assistant decades later, and he is the most lovely human being, and he's currently a showrunner. And he said, and I worked as an assistant to all these other writers who are now quite successful right now, and they were like, we were all waiting for you to ask for help. And I was like, oh my gosh, I thought people are waiting for you to ask them, not the other way around, because if they call you and say, hey, I have this thing for you, you may not be ready for it. You won't be ready. And you will say yes, and you won't want it. You won't be ready. You'll only have said yes because they asked. You always have to make the request to people so they actually know you're ready. And I guess the first bite I learned that lesson was when I was working as a writer assistant in the room, and that's how you get your bump, is by getting an episode. And the showrunner who gave me the position was already treating me like a staff writer. I finally asked him for an episode, and it was my friends in the room who insisted that I ask him. And they were like, how long have you been working with this guy? I was like, they were like, why haven't you asked him? I was like, I don't know. I think I mentioned it a time or two. They're like, no, you need to ask this man for an episode. So, and I should have. And I did. And he was like, great. And afterward, he was like, yeah, I was just waiting for you to ask me.
My gosh, this goes right into my next question. Do you have any advice for, aspiring TV writers? There's your advice.
Yes. First of all, have your writing samples, which I did. I had really wonderful writing samples that continue to get me work to this day. I took a lot of thought in my writing samples to make sure they were evergreen, they were provocative, and they had a really strong point of view. Those take a lot of time and effort. You really, for your writing samples, or even a sample that you want to get made, it needs to be really, really, really strong. I don't want to say perfect. I think perfect is the enemy of the good and the great. I think you just need to have a very strong point of view. You need to have a very clear theme, very clear command of your craft. And they do need to you do need to put your best foot forward. So, and then you believe in that. You believe in it so strongly that you're passing it out like freaking candy. I mean, carefully so, because you don't want people to take your stuff, but to the right people, not so fearful that you just keep it to yourself and you don't let other people who potentially could help you. And then ask. Once you have it, you ask. You say, hey, okay, I have the script. Hey, can I get this? You ask people, and you keep asking. That was the thing. I was like, oh, well, I asked one time. And blah, blah, blah. No, it's you keep asking. If you ask 1 month and go back and ask a month later, 2 months later, there's a great sense of paying it forward, I find, in this business. But I do find everybody's really busy and really just moving a mile a minute. So you do need to like really push, because it's not a personal thing where they're like, I just don't want to call them back. No, people are really just that busy. And I think the other thing that slowed me down is that I got too comfortable. Like, I was like working on shows, and you get really comfortable, and it's really hard to write while you're writing on a television show. But you do, like, I felt like I wasn't as strategic, and I kind of got super comfortable where I wasn't moving forward. And in this business where you are feeding yourself, you are your own garden. That means you have to constantly be tilling the ground. You have to constantly be putting seeds in the soil. You have to constantly be watering. Like, I had stopped doing those things. And if you don't plant the seeds and you don't take care of the land, you won't have a harvest. So now after that, I'm reminded that I constantly need to be sort of, honing my craft, and I need to be tending to my garden, so I always have a harvest. So that
is great advice. So any aspiring TV writers out there, ask for help, ask for what you want, advocate for yourself, have an amazing sample, and don't get too comfortable. Once you get
Yes.
where you want to be, keep writing.
Keep
Yeah,
talking to people, keep networking. I mean, as writers, it's so easy for us to be like, I'm in my, bubble. We don't want to come out. But it's really important for us to continue to network, continue to meet people, continue to explore and expand and think about new ideas for new material.
for sure. So, Lorna, what's next for you? What project are you working on? What's cooking in your world?
Yeah, I'm moving toward being a showrunner and having my own television series. Another thing, obviously, you never want to consider, people are like, oh, the climate's bad. I mean, this business has always been very difficult. So there are new challenges. Again, I, if I'm feeling this, there's space for me. So whatever it is you're feeling, there's obviously space for you. Be strategic and think about how you're going to do it. So I'm writing a couple pilots, but in the meantime, I'm really excited about launching a platform called Lorna Dear, and I'm on Instagram, Lorna, Lorna, like the cookies. If you haven't heard of them, Lorna Doone. But Lorna_Dear, Dear, where I offer my advice and thoughts on life and living and love. Yeah.
Also, your book. I do want you to mention your
Yes,
book.
yes. Oh my gosh, my book.
It's so good.
Oh, thank you so
So
much. I really
inspiring.
appreciate that coming from you. You're such a prolific writer. I'm so impressed by you. It's called Becoming Bold. I wrote it so long ago, and I think even now I feel like I'm more bold than I was when I originally wrote it. But even as I was writing it, it was aspirational, for me, and I knew I had taken some very bold steps, but there was more boldness yet to come, which is hence the becoming.
There's something to be said reading something of when someone is in that becoming stage. It
Yeah.
is so inspiring because it feels sometimes when people are, like now you're this big TV writer and like you've achieved all of this success. So when you're just starting, sometimes it feels like the canyon between where I want to be and where I am now feels so large. I find it best to read books from people who maybe aren't there. So definitely check out Lorna's platform, all of her inspiring videos, and she talks about lots of things between relationships and writing, all kinds of things to inspire you on your journey. Lorna, is there anything that we didn't get to that you wanted to share?
No, I feel like that was everything. Always just believe. Just, believe in yourself, believe in your abilities, and be confident. Yeah, don't doubt.
Thank you so much for this conversation. I think it was so inspiring, and I get goosebumps thinking about going forward with belief in yourself and that trust in the universe. What you want, what you need is there for a reason. We end each episode with this very important question. So I'll ask you, Lorna, how do you take your coffee?
Ooh, I love black coffee, no sugar, but with a spot of macadamia milk and cinnamon. And I tend to make my
Ooh,
own coffee because I like the cinnamon in it and I just like the taste of my ground beans. Like, I just have my own thing where I really love just making my own coffee.
amazing. Well, thank you so much. And please look up Lorna and go follow her on Instagram.
Finally, to end each episode, we take 3 intentional breaths together. There will be a theme offered each time. Here we go. Let's take a breath of gratitude. As we inhale, allow the mind to wander through a few people or experiences you're grateful for. Hold the breath at the top and a long exhale. 2 more breaths. Breathe in, expanding the lungs. Hold it and exhale. And 1 more breath. Inhale and hold it at the top. And a long exhale. May you have a day filled with gratitude. Be well. Thank you for listening to Jennifer with Coffee. Follow us on Instagram @JenniferWithCoffee and on Substack. This has been a Kings of Content production. Music by Oreo CC.